Good day, everyone, and welcome to another wonderful and beautiful spring day here on Cape Cod and the islands. This is Doug Fagan, your volunteer reader, coming to you today, as always, from the studios of the Audible Local Ledger here in sunny and mild Mashpee, Massachusetts. Speaking of sunny and mild, let's begin today's broadcast by taking a look at the weather. And as I've looked on my phone at the extended forecast a couple weeks in advance, looks like we're going to have a lot of sunshine and temperatures gradually and soon moving into the low to mid 60s consistently. But with that in mind, let's begin by looking at today's weather. Today, here on the Cape and Islands, we're going to have a high of 61 degrees, mostly sunny and very nice. When I was out driving yesterday, the thermometer in my car said the outside temperature hit a high of 70 degrees, and it was beautiful. Tonight, after today's high of 61 and sunny, we're going to have a full moon, and it's going to be clear, dropping only down to 41 degrees. Now, Wednesday through Thursday, we kick back into the low 50s, which still isn't too bad, but we're going to have sunshine. Now, Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, we've got 52 degrees as a high and a low in the low to mid 40s each of those 3 days. But look for sunshine today through Thursday. Now, and Friday as well. So, looking at Saturday, a high of 58 degrees, but we're going to have a mostly cloudy day with some rain possibly in the afternoon and an overnight low of 42 degrees. So, if looking at the weather in a week-long parameter, we are going to be sunny for today through Friday, at least partial sunshine and decent temperatures. Now, looking at some water temperatures, if you're thinking about swimming, well, I'd still hold off a little bit. Cape Cod Bay, the water temperature there today is going to be 44 degrees, very minimal wave heights, and low wind velocity. The wave heights are only going to be 1 to 2 feet out in Cape Cod Bay, and the wind direction is north at 4 to 8 knots. Looking at Nantucket Sound, the water temperature a little warmer, as you might expect. The water temperature there is 48 degrees. Wave heights 1 to 3 feet, wind direction west-southwest out there at 6 to 12 knots. Moving on out to the islands in your trusty boat, let's take a look at Oak Bluffs. Sunny at Oak Bluffs with a high of 61 degrees today out on Martha's Vineyard. Edgartown is a high of 60 and a low of 42. Again, sunshine. Sailing then on out to Nantucket at Secaucet, a high of 57. At Nantucket Village, a high of 60. And again, sunny skies. So, not a bad weather forecast as here we are in the middle of April on April the 16th. So, as I said, it looks good from now on out, at least extending into the next week. All right, friends, that's your weather for today and the week ahead. Let's now go to page 1 of today's Tuesday edition of the Cape Cod Times for April 16th. Well, here on page 1, we have an interesting article, I'm sure. It's entitled Bill Supporting Sea Turtle Rescues Passes in the House. It's by Heather McCarran of the Cape Cod Times staff. But before I actually read the article, I will tell you there's a huge picture, well, a picture of a huge turtle, shall I say. And under the picture, it says, spectators give a wide berth as a rehabilitated Kemp's Ridley sea turtle heads toward the waterline at West Dennis Beach in June of last year. It was one of a group found cold stunned on Cape beaches the previous December and was rehabbed at the New England Aquarium. Cape Cod is a hotspot for stranded turtles. A new bill aimed at rescue and rehabilitation work for the turtles was passed by the U.S. House of Representatives this month. Another picture says a satellite-tagged loggerhead turtle pushes its way to the water at West Dennis Beach in July of 2020, several years ago, of course, one of 7 sea turtles that was released then. The animals were all found cold-stunned on Cape Cod the previous fall and were rehabilitated at New England Aquarium over the winter. The tags can transmit locations back to a receiver for over a year, thus giving researchers information about their various migration routes. All right, with that thought in mind, as the pictures have been described, let's go now to the article. In a big win for endangered sea turtles, new legislation aimed at supporting animal rescue and rehab work around the nation has won approval from the U.S. House of Representatives. Particularly good news for conservationists who annually see some of the highest numbers of cold-stunned turtles washing up on Cape Cod beaches. The bipartisan Sea Turtle Rescue Assistance and Rehabilitation Act, which was H.R. 2560, was passed in the U.S. House on April 11th with a 332 to 82 vote. 16 members of the House did not vote. The bill, which next moves on to the Senate, was introduced by Congressman William Keating 1 year ago. It needed a two-thirds vote, and we were successful in getting much greater than two-thirds, which isn't easy to get these days, said Keating, speaking by phone on Friday. So what does this bill do for the sea turtles? Well, the bill creates a new grant program through the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration to support the work of institutions that participate in the National Park Service's Sea Turtle Stranding and Salvage Network as they seek to rescue and rehabilitate endangered sea turtles that have become entangled or stranded, he said. It was supported by 72 organizations in 27 states. It's a national issue, but an issue in Cape Cod more than any other region of the country, said Keating. The World Wildlife Fund points out that nearly all sea turtle species worldwide are endangered, and, Keating noted, all recognized species of sea turtles found within the United States are considered threatened or endangered. The Sea Turtle Rescue Act, he said, will help to provide two organizations like the National Marine Life Center, New England Aquarium, and Mass Audubon's Wellfleet Bay Wildlife Sanctuary, already working to preserve the nation's sea turtle population. So, Cape Cod Bay has become very much of a hotspot for sea turtle strandings. Between 2020 and 2023, the number of cold-stunned turtles rescued from Cape Cod beaches during the late fall and winter rose from 50 to a staggering number of 900. Rescuers have retrieved many critically endangered Kemp's Ridley turtles from Cape shores, as well as the endangered green sea turtles and the very vulnerable leatherback and loggerhead sea turtles. It's a tremendously alarming increase in a very short period of time, said Keating. Climate change has a role in the increased strandings. Warming ocean temperatures linger in Cape Cod Bay longer every year, thus resulting in sea turtles misreading cues to begin migrating south in the fall and winter. When winter temperatures fall very suddenly, many turtles become stranded. They're vulnerable to hypothermia, as well as to increased chances of predation because they cannot move around as easily or as swiftly. The resources provided by this bill will go a long way to saving the lives of these turtles, said Keating, pointing out the importance of ensuring the health of sea turtle populations, not only to preserve biodiversity, but also because of the role sea turtles play in maintaining healthy marine ecosystems and in the ecotourism industry. When researchers and conservationists have the ability to intervene and rehabilitate the cold, stunned, and entangled sea turtles, Keating said it improves the survival rate, obviously. More than two-thirds of the rescued turtles do survive to be released back to the sea and thus to reproduce. Sea turtles are an important part of our marine ecosystem here on Cape Cod, and financial assistance to manage the mass casualty, cold, stunning events of nearly 1,000 turtles a season is essential to our conservation efforts, so said Connie Marigo, President and Executive Director of the National Marine Life Center in Buzzards Bay. While sea turtles are protected under the federally Endangered Species Act, the organizations that work to save them, they do agree there is presently inadequate direct federal support to help manage the very high costs of sea turtle strandings and the response and rehabilitation to same. Karen Moore Duderville, Sea Turtle Research Coordinator for Mass Audubon's Wellfleet Bay Wildlife Sanctuary, said the House's passage of the Sea Turtle Rescue Act is, quote, a huge step closer to creating a permanent grant program to support various organizations responding to and caring for the endangered and threatened sea turtles, end quote. Mass Audubon Cape Cod operates its sea turtle rescue and research program with the help of staff and up to 200 trained volunteers who do patrol beaches day and night to rescue these threatened and endangered turtles and to transport them to rehab facilities, she said. Ultimately, most turtles do recover from being cold stunned and are then released back into their ocean home to grow, thrive, and reproduce. Audubon Cape Cod and other nonprofit organizations are being helped in their efforts to rescue and rehabilitate the sea turtles by the federal funding. The New England Aquarium, in partnership with National Aquarium and South Carolina Aquarium, has been working with Keating, as well as U.S. Senator Edward Markey, a Democrat from Massachusetts, Senator John Cornyn, a Republican from Texas, and Representative Jennifer Gonzalez, a Republican from Puerto Rico, to pass this important legislation. It's time for Congress to adequately support those who have voluntarily helped the federal government fulfill its mandate under the Endangered Species Act to conserve and recover sea turtle species, said New England Aquarium President and CEO Vicki Spruill, National Aquarium President and CEO John Racanelli, and South Carolina President and CEO Kevin Mills. They said this in a joint statement issued Friday afternoon. To continue this critical sea turtle rescue, recovery, and research, organizations like ours across the country need sustained federal support. We encourage the Senate to act quickly to pass this bipartisan legislation. Keating said he feels confident the bill will find success in the Senate as well. We're hopeful the Senate will take this up and move forward by the end of the year, he said. The good news, however, is that there is support forward for this bill. All right, friends, that's the end of that article, which was entitled A Bill Supporting Sea Turtle Rescues Passes in the House. And it would be critical to have this funding, especially for those organizations that work to rescue the stranded and cold-stunned turtles here on Cape Cod. All right, let's move. There's another article of local interest here on page 1, again written by Heather McCarran, and it's entitled Barnstable Agrees to Take Part in Regional Dispatches. And here is the article. Barnstable is getting ready to partner with Sandwich and Yarmouth on a new regional emergency communications center, which the town will host. The town council recently voted unanimously to enter an intermunicipal agreement with the towns that lays the foundation for the project. It's the second board to approve the pact, which also got unanimous support from the Sandwich Board of Selectmen on March 28th. The Yarmouth Select Board is scheduled to discuss the subject and vote on it on April 23rd. Barnstable Police Chief Gene Chalice explained at the April 4 Town Council meeting that the intermunicipal agreement, which sets up the operating structure of the proposed shared dispatch center and outlines the town's financial responsibilities, it needs to be in place before the towns can take advantage of incentive grants from the state 911 department, an agency within the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security. The agency, she said, strongly supports establishing regional public safety answering points, or PSAPs, through incentive grants. Barnstable officials have been working on the proposal with their counterparts in Yarmouth and Sandwich for the last 2 years, along with State 911 Department and UMass Boston Collins Center for Public Management, which conducts a feasibility study. The study concluded that these three communications are well suited to establish a regional PSAP in the form of a Regional Emergency Communications Center, or the acronym RECC, and that there would be both operational and financial benefits to all three communities, Chalice said. In Barnstable, part of the Regional Emergency Communications leads us into this next paragraph. At present, the three towns operating individual PSAPs. None of them is part of the Regional Emergency Communications Center operated out of Joint Base Cape Cod by the Barnstable County Sheriff's Office, although that center does serve as a backup for Barnstable and does provide fire and emergency medical service dispatch for the Barnstable and West Barnstable fire districts. With an intermunicipal agreement in place, the towns can receive incentive grants for design, engineering, construction, and initial operation of the Regional Dispatch Center. The towns already received a $373,000 award last July for the initial engineering and architectural services, pending the signed intermunicipal agreement. They are in line for another $476,000 grant in fiscal year 2025 for the very same purpose. Once that planning and design is complete, we anticipate requesting additional grant funding available through state 911 incentive programs that will cover the full cost of construction and startup for the Regional Dispatch Center, said Chalice. The center would be a new facility with new, up-to-date equipment somewhere in the vicinity of the existing Barnstable Police Station on Finney's Lane in Hyannis, according to the chief. How much will Barnstable save with a Tri-Town Dispatch Center? Well, regionalizing dispatch services will mean millions in savings for all three towns. As just one example, Sandwich officials noted at their March 28 meeting that the town is expected to realize a $3.5 million savings during the center's first 6 years of operation. Barnstable and Yarmouth also look to realize savings topping $1 million. Sandwich Fire Chief John Burke, talking at the Sandwich Selectmen's meeting on March 28, said besides the financial benefits, regionalizing offers further professional utilization of emergency services and emergency dispatch services. It also increases opportunities for training and advancement while giving the ability to provide supervisory capacity and also to provide stable staffing and response in a very difficult recruiting and retention environment. The State 1-1 program is expected to support all center operating costs for the first 3 years, thus reducing to 50% for year 4 and 25% for year 5. By year 6 of this program, the towns would look to fully fund their share of costs. According to Chalice, the financial responsibilities, once grants diminish, would be based on each town's volume of emergency calls and their various populations. According to preliminary estimates, Barnstable would take on more than 50% of the responsibility, followed by Yarmouth with 27% and Sandwich with 18%. For Barnstable, the regional dispatch would include the town-wide police dispatch and fire dispatch for Hyannis Fire, since those two departments presently have a joint dispatch. The town's other 4 independent fire districts, Barnstable, West Barnstable, Cotuit, and Centerville, Osterville, Marston's Mills, could all later choose to participate in the regional service rather than going through the county as they do now. But at least initially, she said, they don't qualify because the State 911 program is for existing PSAPs. Sandwich, meanwhile, would retain 5 communication staff members at its police station to address concerns about the potential of a, quote, dark police station, end quote. So, how will the 911 calls work? Well, with this new system, the 911 equipment will be taken out of our building and will be in place at the RECC, said Sandwich Police Chief Jason Keene at the March 28 meeting. When they receive a 911 call, that requires police services in Sandwich, the call will be transferred to our dispatchers working within our station, and they will answer the call and dispatch appropriately. The staff members who presently take 911 calls for both police and fire departments would also be present to assist walk-ins, monitor anyone under police custody, and take general calls. Officials said regionalizing dispatch should not increase response times. Burke said he's totally comfortable where we're going and said he and Keene are both 100% on board, knowing both of our operations are not negatively impacted at all. The regional effort, in fact, will increase the number of communications officers overall, as well as the number who are specifically trained in fire rescue dispatching, a significant advantage to public safety, so said the chief. Current dispatchers will be able to transfer into the regional center. Sandwich Town Manager George Dunham said the center would complement the service provided to parts of the Cape by the Sheriff's Office, because if you had two larger dispatch outfits on the Cape and one went down, there's that immediate backup nearby. If Yarmouth also approves the agreement later this month, planning for the new center can begin. It should take about 3 years to complete. All right, friends, that's the conclusion of that article about the towns agreeing to take part in a regional versus local dispatch center. We shall see how that works. Well, friends, as most of you know, Donald Trump's New York trial starts today, and there's an article relative to this, or it started yesterday, and there's an article relative to this here on page 1. It said Trump, the nation's only former president to be criminally charged, New York trial starts with jury picks. Convictions in the case about hush money cover-up and election interference could hurt his election bid. This is by the USA Today Network with a dateline of New York, and here's the article. After warring cases and deadlines and delays and attempts to delay, the first criminal trial of a former American president began Monday. Wearing his signature blue suit and red tie, Donald Trump, age 77, sat expressionless at the defense table with his attorneys while a photographer snapped his picture. Justice Juan Merchan, who is overseeing the trial, entered about half an hour later. The presumptive Republican presidential nominee faces 34 counts for allegedly falsifying business records to disguise a hush money payment to a porn star and unlawfully influence the 2016 presidential election. Trump lost a flurry of motions and appeals in recent days seeking to delay again the proceedings. But unlike in his 3 other criminal cases, which deal with allegations that he tried to steal the 2020 presidential election and mishandled classified documents, those delay tactics didn't let him avoid the start of the New York trial. The court has estimated the trial, which will not be televised, will last between 6 and 8 weeks. Jury selection alone could last several days or even weeks. As the day began, Trump continued to make political hay. Before entering the building on Monday, he gave a 1-minute statement to reporters alleging, without evidence, that the trial was politically persecution and an assault on America. He cited unnamed legal scholars, calling the case nonsense. It's a case that should have never been brought, said Trump, adding, I'm very honored to be here. Minutes later, his campaign texted out solicitations for donations saying, quote, I'm in court now, in all caps. They're trying to destroy me, but you can stop them. End quote. The former president has long claimed that the criminal charges against him are targeting his re-election campaign, though there's no evidence of that whatsoever. The trial will feature some salacious allegations. Prosecutors claim Trump falsified records to conceal that he was reimbursing his former lawyer, Michael Cohen, for a $130,000 hush money payment to porn star Stormy Daniels. Daniels said she had sex with the real estate mogul shortly after his wife, Melania Trump, gave birth to their son. Trump denies Daniels' claims and has pleaded not guilty. The charges are felonies as opposed to misdemeanors because prosecutors claim Trump falsified the records in order to conceal violating federal election laws through a payment that was meant to help his 2016 campaign but exceeded campaign contribution limits. Though the case is regarded by some legal experts as the least consequential of the 4 criminal prosecutions Trump's facing, it is the only one guaranteed to go to trial before the November 5th election. Reuters' Ipsos polling shows a guilty verdict could hobble his prospects. If Trump were convicted, many legal experts have said a realistic sentence ranges from probation to 4 years in prison, although Trump would likely remain free on appeal during the duration of the election. The words early rulings lead us into this next paragraph, which says, within minutes, Judge Merchan denied Trump's second bid to have the judge recuse himself from the case on the basis that his daughters work for a political consulting firm with Democratic clients poses a conflict of interest. In rejecting that argument, Merchan cited an opinion from the State Advisory Committee on Judicial Ethics that Merchan's impartiality could not be reasonably questioned based on his daughter's work because Trump's case doesn't involve her business. The court will not address this matter further, Merchan said Monday. Merchan also addressed a series of issues about testimony and evidence. The judge tentatively ruled that Melania Trump's pregnancy during a second alleged affair between Trump and former Playboy model Karen McDougal can't be shared with the jury, saying he didn't consider it necessary at this moment. Trump is denied, again, having an affair with McDougal. The judge reiterated a ruling that the jury can hear testimony about Trump's infamous Access Hollywood comments, but can't watch the tape because it's too prejudicial against Trump. Prosecutors say after the tape came out, Trump feared another sex scandal would further endanger his standing with women voters, prompting him to pay then for Daniel's silence with the $130,000 payment. The words, "it's going to backfire," lead us into this next paragraph. Police stood guard in front of the courthouse amid a maze of barricades, and helicopters shadowed the motorcade of black SUVs that ferried Trump, the Republican candidate in the 2024 White House race, from his Trump Tower apartment. The group outside included Andrew Giuliani, son of longtime Trump advisor and former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. He believed if people looked at the facts of the case, Trump would be acquitted. "I'm just hopeful that you do have a few unbiased jurors in there," he said. A handful of anti-Trump protesters gathered in the plaza across the street carrying hand-painted signs reading "Loser" and "Convict Trump already." On the other side of a barricade, a small but fervent group of Trump fans held their own signs. Bijaya Acharya, 32, slept just a couple hours after driving for Uber so he could take the train from Queens, Trump's hometown, through to don his iconic red Make America Great Again hat and show support. Acharya, a native of Nepal who became a U.S. citizen in 2021, supports Trump because of his push to crack down on crime and illegal immigration. He believed the trial only helps Trump's chances of winning. It's going to backfire, he said. It's not going to hurt him. Well, time will tell. This being day 2 of the beginning of Trump's trial in New York. All right, that's the end of that article, friends. Let's now move to page 3, the Cape and Islands. Only one article of local interest here amongst a myriad of ads and pictures. And that article says 4 candidates vie for 2 select board seats in Wellfleet. And here's the article. Wellfleet has its town election before its town meeting this year. With town leadership changes, an interim town administrator coming late to the process, and delayed information about Wellfleet's share of Nauset Regional School District costs, the Select Board thought it wise to push the town meeting back. The town election, however, could not be pushed back. The Select Board race is the only contested race in Wellfleet. 4 individuals are vying for 2 open seats that hold 3-year terms each. John Wolf and Tim Sayer are running for re-election. Stephen Kopitz, that's Kopits, and Sheila Lyons are the other 2 candidates running. So when is the 2024 Wellfleet election? Well, voting will take place at the Wellfleet Adult Community Center on April 29 from noon to 7 p.m. About Stephen Kopitz, 3 things motivated Kopitz to run: contentious select board meetings, a letter from town department heads complaining about lack of support from the board, and the resignation of town administrator Rich Waldo. Kopitz said his top priorities are the stabilization of town administration, a reduction in the stress levels in senior management, and at board meetings and getting past a 10-year period of instability. He calls affordable housing a challenge because of high construction costs, interest rates, and real estate valuation. He is determined to get all the units at Maurice's campground for affordable housing, not just 20%. He'd like to see the town start orienting activities more towards an active but aging population. Ropitz has a corporate finance background and has served on a half-dozen corporate boards, he said. He is currently on the Cable Internet and Cellular Service Advisory Committee, working on getting Internet to Wellfleet's Atlantic beaches. I understand what it is to be on a board and the expectations, the role of the board also, but I also understand how an organization operates, he said, during an April 10 phone call. And now about Sheila Lyons, the other candidate. Lyons wants the select board to get back to its true function: to set policy, let town staff do their jobs, work with staff to achieve goals, and to help the public understand the what and why of things and why they are being done. Dredging, determining the most economical and efficient ways to solve water quality and wastewater problems, and being compliant with the Environmental Protection Agency are her top priorities. Our job is to understand what is in the best interest of the town, to make sure the town is functioning properly and that we are taking advantage of opportunities through grants, federal and state, and measures being able to access that money to support the administrator in carrying out those tasks, she said on April 12th. Finishing off Maurice's campground and the 95 Lawrence Road affordable housing project are crucial. Encouraging people to participate in town boards and getting people to trust town government again is important. Lyons has a master's degree in social work. She is currently a Barnstable County Commissioner. The experience has given her an understanding of the Cape's big issues, she said, and she is the president of the Wellfleet Community Forum and on the board of directors for WOMR and Forward, a Cape Cod nonprofit for autism. And now about Tim Sayer, one of the incumbents. Sayer was elected to the Select Board last September in a special election. Sayer said he's been attending Select Board meetings for 3 years, Shellfish Advisory Board meetings for 1 year, and has been to multiple Planning Board and Zoning Board of Appeals meetings as well. I have a pretty good knowledge of what's going on in town, and I think I'm clued into what's happening and what needs to happen moving forward, and what the concerns are, he said on April 10th. For Sayer, the top issues facing Wellfleet are affordable housing, meeting state regulations regarding water quality and septic systems, maintaining a level-funded town budget, infrastructure, and figuring out how to come up with money to fund dredging projects. The town must start looking at sewage, alternative septic systems, and how they will impact water quality in town, he said. Also this year, the town meeting warrant will not have a Proposition 2.5 override for the first time in years. He was a proponent of and helped pass a rule allowing members of the public to speak for 3 minutes rather than 2 during public comment period. The new rule allows members of the public to speak a second and third time for 3 minutes each time. Sayer boasts that he takes calls from anyone about issues facing the town, and that he listens to what people have to say. I'm on the phone constantly with people who live in this town about different things they want to sound off about, ask questions about, or give their opinions on, he said. And I listen to what everybody has to say. And now the final candidate, John Wolf, who is also an incumbent. Wolf was elected to the board in June of 2021 and currently serves as the vice chairman and clerk. He was on the Marina Advisory Committee for 8 years and said his town government experience has driven home the acute need for affordable housing, one of Wellfleet's biggest issues. The town's ability to hire and keep personnel, pay them enough that they could afford to live on the Cape, and having them within commuting distance, particularly for police and fire personnel, are problems, he said. He called the shellfish industry, one of the state's strongest, key to having young families call Wellfleet their home. The town's median age is 60, he said. Getting younger people to live in the town is going to be a challenge because of the housing, earnings, and bylaws requiring harvesters to be domiciled in town. Wolf said he's been pressing for setting aside a significant portion of Maurice's for affordable housing ownership, not just rentals, so people do have a stake in the town. Wolf wants the town to do a better job planning for vehicle replacement and capital planning. Dredging needs to be on the front burner as well, he said. He'd like the state legislators to help push back against a mitigation plan for the South Harbor, calling the rationale behind that requirement flawed. Wolf served 8 years on the Marina Advisory Committee, and he's been on the Select Board for 3 years. He's worked in the HVAC field, held his own business, and is a licensed captain running charters out of Wellfleet. All right, friends, there you have it. Background information on the 4 people, 2 incumbents and 2 non-incumbents, vying for 2 select board seats in the town of Wellfleet. All right, we're a little bit past our halfway point, so let's move on to today's obituary. Our first obituary today is that of Patricia Garrity, age 86. It has a dateline of born, but also in parentheses, Pocasset. Patricia A. Pat Garrity, age 86 of born, passed away on April 12th at her home in Pocasset. She was the beloved wife of the late John O. Jack Garrity. Born in Adams, Mass., she was the daughter of the late Celia and Horace Esposito. As the oldest by many years, she was like a second mother to the younger girls. Music was always a big part of her life. Although she learned to play the piano and accordion, vocal music was most important to her. Pat graduated from Drury High School in 1956 and went on to North Adams State College to continue her education. It was there that she was introduced to Jack by a mutual friend, and the rest is history. Pat and Jack were married on October 12th of 57. They moved from North Adams to Pittsfield, where their 2 children were born. When Jack was offered a position at Worcester Memorial Hospital, they moved to Shrewsbury. Pat was a big sports fan and was a fan since her youth. Since both retired, they enjoyed new adventures in birding. They became members of St. John Church and took part in many activities, including the 4 p.m. Mass. Mass of Christian Burial will be at St. John of the Evangelist Parish in Pocasset Cemetery. For directions and online condolence, visit the funeral home of Church. It's kind of confusing, but that's what it is. Our next obituary comes from East Sandwich, and it is that of Nancy A. Buckley, and here it is. Nancy Ann Buckley, née Hardy, was born in Quincy, Mass. On December 10th of 1944. After a lengthy illness, Nancy passed away on April 12th. She was the wife of Bruce Buckley for 59 years, mother of Bridget, and grandmother of Ariana and Caroline. After graduating from Burdett College, Nancy continued her education, earning her bachelor's and master's degree from Suffolk University. She was employed as a teacher at Bourne High School, Cape Cod Community College, and Harwich High School. After retiring from Harwich High, Nancy returned to Cape Cod Community College in her role of an adjunct professor working within Project 4. Nancy's life included many adventures shared with her husband and family. Throughout the years, they owned several boats, her favorite being the cruising yacht Starbuck, which was home ported in Tennant's Harbor, Maine, where they maintained a summer home. There they enjoyed cruising throughout the mid-coast Maine waters with their daughter and granddaughters. Nancy was a woman of varied talents. Three of the homes she and her family resided in over the years were architecturally designed by Nancy. A master seamstress, she was not only good at sewing clothes for her daughter and granddaughters, she was also the go-to person for creating costumes for school plays, as well as Halloween costumes, even for the pet. Nancy is survived by her husband Bruce, her daughter Bridget, her granddaughters Ariana and Caroline, and her sisters Susan Turner and Doris Hardy Dow. Visitation will be from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Thursday, April 18th, at Nickerson Bourne Funeral Home, 154 Route 6A, Sandwich. A funeral service will follow at the Nickerson Bourne Home from 12 to 12:30, and a graveside service will be held at 12:45 at Sandwich Town Cemetery on Route 130. In lieu of flowers, donations can be made in loving memory of Nancy to Cafe Riverview on Route 6A. This cafe is a hands-on learning classroom for the Riverview School, of which Nancy was a staunch supporter. All right, friends, there you have it. The obituary of Nancy A. Buckley of East Sandwich. Here's a brief obituary, that of Richard E. Cosgrove, Cosgrove, with the dateline of Brockton. Richard F. Cosgrove was born on August 24, 1943 in Brockton and passed away peacefully on April 11th in Bonita Springs, Florida. All are welcome to attend his funeral on Monday, the 22nd of April, with calling hours from 9 to 10 a.m. at WAIT, that's W-A-I-T-T, Funeral Home on North Main Street in Brockton. A funeral mass will be at 10:30 at Christ the King Church and burial in Calvary Cemetery. Family and friends are invited to join the family for a luncheon after the burial. In lieu of flowers, memorial gifts may be made to Tunnel to Towers Foundation. All right, as I said, that's a very brief one, and that's of Richard F. Cosgrove of Brockton. And finally, here's another very brief obituary, that of Lois A. O'Brien, O-B-R-I-O-N. Lois O. O'Brien, born on November 16th of 1944, peacefully departed this world on March 18th at the young age of 79, survived by her children Deborah McGilvery and Sean O'Brien. Her compassionate nature led her to dedicate herself to mental health support through Fellowship Health Resources. In lieu of flowers, donations can be made to the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. A celebration of her life will be held at a later date. Lois's legacy of love and light will forever be cherished by those she touched. Okay, that's, as I said, brief. It's of Lois O'Brien. All right, friends, let's move on. Here's an article of interest to those of us who are in our later years, and it says Medicaid cuts prove burden for many. In a survey, 23% of those dropped are still uninsured. This is a USA Today article, and here it is. A 2-year-old girl with cystic fibrosis is among the masses of Americans who lost Medicaid coverage after the pandemic. The Jacksonville, Florida toddler needed the insurance to cover life-saving medication and doctor visits, according to a lawsuit brought by the girl's mother and others. Instead, when she got sick last year, her family had to settle for a costly emergency room visit. A new survey on the fallout from resumed checks on Medicaid eligibility found that nearly 1 in 4 people bumped from Medicaid coverage last year remains uninsured. Nearly half the people kicked out of the program ultimately qualified again, suggesting they shouldn't have been thrown out in the first place. And millions endured gaps in coverage that could have endangered their health. The KFF survey found that 23% of Medicaid recipients disenrolled when states resumed eligibility checks last year, still don't have health insurance. These individuals are more likely to struggle for health care and delay medical appointments. One note before we move on, I might have preempted this article by saying Medicare cuts. If I did, that was a mistake. It's Medicaid, which means those below a certain income level, not Medicare. All right, let's continue with the article. KFF, a nonprofit health organization, designed the survey to discover how eligibility checks had impacted people on Medicaid, the federal health program for low-income people and people with disabilities. The federal government provided billions of dollars in federal aid to states on the condition that they not remove people from Medicaid until the COVID-19 emergency was over. When the public health emergency ended and eligibility checks resumed in April of 2023, states were allowed to pursue these checks at their own pace. Some states accelerated checks, while others took longer to implement them. Two states, Oregon and Alaska, won't complete checks until early 2025. KFF's national survey of more than 1,200 U.S. adults found that 19% with Medicaid coverage during the pandemic were disenrolled, some temporarily and others for longer stretches. Among the people removed from Medicaid, 47% said they eventually qualified again for Medicaid coverage. More than 1 in 4 adults secured health insurance from an employer, the military, an Affordable Care Act insurance plan, or Medicare, the federal health program for people 65 and older. Even before the pandemic began, people churned in and out of Medicaid as their life circumstances changed. For example, after getting hired, losing a job, or having a child. What's unique about the past year is the sheer number of eligibility checks state Medicaid programs confronted at once, a process referred to as unwinding because the ranks of enrollees swelled during the COVID-19 public health emergency. KFF's research showed that the 20 million Medicaid recipients were disenrolled since the eligibility checks resumed. Another 43.6 million people had their coverage renewed, and 30.4 million are awaiting Medicaid renewals now. Most states should be done with the renewals by June, said Jennifer Tolman, Deputy Director of KFF's program on Medicaid and Medicaid services, and is expected to release an estimate on when states will complete their pandemic-era reviews soon. Tolbert said this would explain why so many people who had been removed were soon added back to the public health insurance program. These removals did have an impact, she said, because even temporarily losing coverage can cause severe harm to people. The survey found that 56% of people who lost their Medicaid coverage had skipped or delayed various medical care or concerns. Alabama resident Kayla Wildman, 31, qualified for Medicaid coverage before she gave birth to her first son in December of 2020. Wildman, who lives in a small town southeast of Huntsville, Alabama, said the insurance was comprehensive and helped pay for doctor's appointments, medication, and bills from the birth of her second child in 2022. Last December, midway through a 3-month treatment for hepatitis C, she was dropped from Alabama's Medicaid program, and without insurance, she knew she could not afford to pay thousands of dollars for the medication. She said, "I was freaking out, actually. I couldn't afford to pay the full price out of pocket, so I was like, what do I do?" Before she was pregnant with her first child, Wildman had insurance through her job at a local hospital. Before that, she tried to purchase coverage through the Affordable Care Act, known as Obamacare, but the plan cost too much. She said she tried again when she lost Medicaid last November and bought a Blue Cross Blue Shield plan through the Affordable Care Act marketplace for $65 per month. The KFF survey found 8% of people like Wildman who were removed from Medicaid secured a new plan through the Affordable Care Act, thanks in part to more generous pandemic-era subsidies that make the monthly premiums more affordable. The insurance plan paid for her hepatitis C treatment, and she is now cured of the viral disease. She also has a wider selection of doctors compared with her choices under Medicaid. It isn't so unaffordable that I can't manage it, she said. Consumer advocates say many people have lost Medicaid coverage due to paperwork glitches and other administrative mistakes. Advocates say consumers have encountered long wait times when calling for help from state Medicaid programs. Other patients, including some people with disabilities, have had trouble getting in-person help, said Alicia Emanuel, a senior attorney with the National Health Law Program in Los Angeles. People on Medicaid always face these challenges, but the pandemic backlog of renewals magnified the issues, Emanuel said. These issues are illustrative of cracks in the Medicaid system, and these are issues that advocates have been sounding the alarm about for years, she said. It's just reached an inflection point because of the unwinding. All right, there you have it. An article about people cut after the pandemic of COVID-19 from Medicaid and their efforts to get back on the program, meanwhile suffering some medical discomfort due to finances. All right, friends, let's move on. Moving to the lighter side of today's paper, and you can take it for what it's worth, we go to the Ask Carolyn column, where, as you know, writers from out there in whatever land they're in write to Carolyn with their issues or problems, seeking her advice. This headline says, Mom years for her kids to feel the same freedoms of her youth. Here's the letter from someone out there. Dear Carolyn, I'm a mom to a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and watching my favorite movies growing up is making me nostalgic about my childhood and how free it felt. When I was just a few years older than my daughter is now, I was riding my bike to the pool, going on adventures with friends, and exploring my slice of the world. My husband has similar memories. Exploration and being outside was our jam. Is that possible in this day and age? As a kid, I knew bad things could happen, but parents gave us a wide berth. Has the world gotten more dangerous, or are we hearing about the dangers more? Are summer days a la the Sandlot no longer? I want my kids to safely experience freedom. Am I being naive? Here's Carolyn's response. Dear, am I naive? You are idealizing somewhat. I had that childhood too, and it was never worry-free, but that was kind of the point. Learning to avoid and get out of trouble was seen as part of growing up. Important skill building, such as resourcefulness training, required trouble by definition, and I think that's where we've changed as a society. The risk is the same. Lower, arguably, with bike helmets, smarter cars, etc., but our appetite for risk plummeted. Judginess of and by parents hasn't helped. If something goes by and goes wrong, there's a whole chorus eager to shame and blame. That's not all. Demographically, we've shifted from the Sandlot. Fewer households have kids in them. Fewer kids go outside. They're on their devices all the time. So fewer neighborhoods support pick-up sports balls. So to get that kind of multi-kid synergy, pick your cul-de-sac carefully. Then hope the kids aren't in college all day chasing travel leagues. I think you'll find sympathetic fellow parents if you ask around. We're actually uprooted from a beloved neighborhood to a place more suited to free exploration. You can also buck the local trends and just give your kids longer leashes instead of childhood, eating, and smartphones. So kids who explore aren't just on TV. You can reproduce some free-range conditions. Just be ready to hear it from the pearl-clutching police. All right, kind of a confusing response, but there you have it. I think the mother is basically saying, how can I get my kids outside to play and enjoy it? Good luck with that. Good luck with getting them off their devices. I can tell you that. All right, I can hear the bellows out there now, friends. What about the lottery? Did he forget the lottery today? No, I haven't. So let's take a look at that now as we head toward the conclusion of today's broadcast. The Mega Millions jackpot is currently $148 million. The Powerball, which was recently over $1 billion and won by someone in Oregon, is now at $78 million. Nothing to sneeze at on either jackpot. So let's take a look at some of the more recent drawings. Yesterday's midday drawing, here were those numbers: 2681, Yesterday, midday, 2681. The evening drawing were these 9590. 9590 for the evening drawing. Mass cash numbers from yesterday were these 8, 13, 18, 19, and 23. Again, mass cash yesterday 8, 13, 18, 19, 23. Powerball, which was drawn yesterday, here are those numbers 7, 16, 41, 56, and 61, with a Powerball of 23. Again, repeating, Powerball from yesterday 7, 16, 41, 56, 61, and 23. Mega Millions, the most recent drawing, was last Friday. There'll be a drawing tonight as well. Last Friday's numbers were these 1, 12, 14, 18, 66, with a Mega Ball of 16. Again, last Friday's Mega Millions 1, 12, 14, 18, 66, and a Mega Ball of 16. Mega Bucks, if you play that, drawn yesterday, were these 6, 11, 12, 25, 28, 43. 6, 11, 12, 25, 28, 43 for yesterday's Mega Bucks. Yesterday's Lucky for Life 11, 24, 25, 44, 46, and a Lucky for Life ball of 4. Again, Lucky for Life 11, 24, 25, 44, 46, and a Lucky for Life ball of 4. All right, there you have it, the lottery. And for those of you who continue to play, I say, as I always do, good luck, player. Well, friends, as we conclude today's broadcast, I'd like to offer you, especially since the weather has seemingly broken and looks good ahead, a couple quotes about spring so that we can not only enjoy it as we sense it outside, but can also think about it. Here's one by Margaret Elizabeth Sangster. It's spring again. I can hear the birds sing again, see the flowers start to bloom, see young people fall in love. All right, how about that? And maybe one more. Spring adds new life and beauty to all that is. I can go along with that. All right, friends, we are at the end of today's broadcast of Tuesday, April 16th of the Cape Cod Times. Hard to believe we're halfway through April already, but we have much to look forward to in terms of weather and getting outside for activities. So enjoy the weather in good health and happiness. This is Doug Fagan, your volunteer reader, bidding you adieu for today from the studios of the Audible Local Ledger here in Mashpee, Massachusetts. Thank you for the privilege of your time. I look forward to reading for you again next week. Have a great day, a great week ahead, and enjoy good health. So long for